Oh hey, just getting ready to sample this stew that's been simmering. Tastes a little, what's the word I'm searching for? Smurfy? Greetings people of the internet, I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs. Welcome to the underground laboratory where from time to time we pay tribute to those mad scientists, supervillains, and evil geniuses that deserve to be recognized, immortalized, to go down in history for all the things that they've done for evildoers everywhere. And today we're going to talk about the Smurfs arch nemesis Gargamel, and we'll probably throw in his little cat Azrael as well as we do a portrait like we always do, because we want to pay tribute to these guys and put them up on the wall of fame. And we're going to talk a little bit about Gargamel, what makes him a supervillain, or is he a mad scientist? I don't know. Does alchemy count as a science, or it's up to you, but in any way, he fits into at least one of those categories, so I think he deserves to be on the Mad Genius Hall of Fame, Wall of Fame. Let's get to it. All right, here we go. Let's start sketching the evil wizard Gargamel, arch nemesis of the Smurfs. And we're going to talk a little bit about Gargamel, but I also want to talk about the process of the drawing and some of the tools that I use and everything. So this sort of tan paper that I'm using is Kona Classic paper. Kona makes some different tone papers. The Classic is this sort of tan look, and I really like the feel this has, and I want to do some more of this using this paper again, because I use it for the Mad Genius stuff, but I haven't used it for any of the other drawings I do, but I really like the effect, and I like the way I like the way it handles color, and even though it's you kind of got to get used to it a little bit, because the color is obviously, when you're working with the tone paper, they lay down a little differently and everything, but with a little playing around and everything, it really does give a cool effect. So for this, the gesture that I'm doing right now, I am using a Prismacolor Kohl Erase pencil. They're erasable color pencils, and for this, I think I'm using more like a sepia color. I use all different colors depending on what I do, but I love these pencils. They've just got a really nice feel, and I like the way they lay down on the paper and everything. The only problem with the pencils is a lot of times in shipping, sometimes they're brittle inside, so sometimes they'll break apart. So I find that you got to have the right sharpener, or else I've gone through so many of these pencils, because in sharpening, it just seems like you sharpen them and they just break apart, and you sharpen and they break apart. So if I could alleviate that issue with these pencils, I'd love them a little more, because I've gone through so many and everything. But that's a minor, that's sort of a drawback. But other than that, I really do like these pencils. So like I said, I'm just kind of getting the gesture and some of the facial expressions right now of Gargamel. Such a great character. I like the visualization of him, and how he's kind of brought to life, and we'll get to the creator and everything. Well, let's talk about that now. But before we talk about Gargamel, we have to talk about the Smurfs. Now, the Smurfs were created in 1958 by a Belgian comic book artist, Peyo. That's his sort of nom de plume. His real name is Pierre Culliford, and but he goes by Peyo, and that's what most people know him as. And he created this whole world of the Smurfs, and I was a big fan of Smurfs growing up. Like my brother, he collected all the toys and everything. So Smurfs was really big. But like I said, it was created back in 1958, and most of us who lived in North America, we didn't really discover the Smurfs until the 80s, when it kind of came over here and became popular. But it had a huge following in Europe, as a lot of comics do. I mean, some of the European comics, just long-running comics that were very successful, and it isn't until later on when we kind of discover them over here, which is kind of a shame, but at least they come here eventually. But anyway, so the Smurfs are these little tiny blue creatures, and they stand about 3 apples high, and they're like I said, they're blue. They all dress in white. They have white hats, white pants, except for with one exception. Papa Smurf, the leader of the Smurfs, he has sort of a white beard, but he wears a red cap and pants. and all of the Smurfs sort of have, you know, their personality written on their sleeve, so to speak. So there's Vanity Smurf, who is vain. There's Brainy Smurf, who is really smart. So it's either that, you know, sort of their personality, their occupation, or whatever. But they're all sort of, each Smurf has a particular personality, and that's usually that particular character's name. So as I mentioned, the Smurfs was a very popular European cartoon. In the 80s, it was adapted into an American cartoon series by Hanna-Barbera, and that's where most people like myself who live in Northern America, United States, discovered the Smurfs. And it was a phenomenon. I mean, it was on, you know, everything. It was, you know, lunchboxes, you know, the toys were a big thing. As I mentioned, my brother collected he had a huge Smurf collection. He had the Smurf houses, and he had all the little Smurfs, and some of them were kind of rare. I remember it was hard to find like a Smurfette, or particularly Gargamel. I remember he had Gargamel, and that was like a big thing. He was kind of, I remember him just being hard to find. And the other thing I remember about the Smurfs is, I remember them, and I don't know if this is true, but at least my parents would tell me that they were really expensive, because they were really these just little figurines. But I think they were close to what like a Star Wars figure might cost, or the play sets, the little house. I remember that being like, my brother really wanted the house, but it was kind of pricey. It was just, but they were basically these just little sort of like Rubbermaid material houses. They were kind of cool and everything, but they're, you know, it was kind of I guess in that sort of Lego Playmobil range where they were a little pricier than the average toys back in the day. But yeah, my brother loved Smurfs, and he had a huge collection. I don't know whatever happened to that collection, but you know, I think I was a little older at the time. I still liked the cartoons and everything, but I didn't collect any of the figures. But I did, you know, my brother had that collection, and I just remember it. But as I mentioned, the Smurfs were just everywhere. And of course, the subject we're talking about today, the Smurfs' arch nemesis Gargamel. So Gargamel is this evil wizard, and he absolutely hates Smurfs, and he's hell-bent on finding their hidden village. And the reasons for that sometimes change. Sometimes he wants to capture them and sort of use them for their magic to help him become a more powerful wizard. Sometimes he wants to eat the Smurfs. Sometimes he wants to turn them into gold. So his motives kind of change throughout. But one thing is for certain, he absolutely hates Smurfs, and that's sort of his catchphrase. It's like, I hate Smurfs. And of course, at the end of every episode, after he's defeated and he's running away, he's yelling, "I'll get you if it's the last thing I do." And of course, I can't do a Gargamel impersonation, but anyway, but yeah, he's just a fun villain, and he is, you know, he's sort of the embodiment of this sort of mad scientist. Even though he doesn't necessarily use science, a lot of it is like alchemy or wizardry, but sometimes he does create inventions. Like he created a blue magnet to catch Smurfs that just attracts anything blue. So sometimes he'll get into more invention type things. But most of the time they're potions, and you know, most of his inventions or potions, they are not successful. They usually backfire. But there was one invention that was semi-successful, is that he created Smurfette. Now Smurfette, of course, is the only Smurf who is a female, and because I guess all Smurfs are male, he created a female Smurf to sort of woo the Smurfs, like it was an evil Smurf to kind of help him capture the Smurf. But of course, Papa Smurf was able to turn Smurfette good, and you know, she became like a very obviously popular character. And if you know Smurfs, you have to know Smurfette. But she was created out of clay, similar to Wonder Woman, by Gargamel, and brought to life. So it wasn't successful as far as the plot to capture the Smurfs, but it created you know, a fan favorite character and everything. So that was all Gargamel's doing. So probably his greatest invention, or his greatest spell come to life. So the Smurfs have, the Smurfs ran for quite a bit. Like I said, from in the 80s it ran from 81 to 89, new episodes, and then after that in reruns it ran for a while. So super popular up until the 90s, and then it sort of dropped off a little bit, not as popular. But then it was brought back as live action movies, and if you're a fan of the original Smurfs, probably not a big fan of those movies. To be perfectly honest, I haven't seen any of the movies, but just judging from what I've seen on the commercials, I don't think I would be a huge fan of them, or at least the first two movies, because basically what they did was, the Alvin and the Chipmunks movies were successful, so I think Sony is the producer of the movies, just decided, let's make an Alvin and the Chipmunks movie, but with Smurfs. And also, I think if you were an Alvin and the Chipmunks fan, you probably weren't a big fan, because I was a fan of that, also the cartoons from the 80s as well. And I guess there's some similarities. The Alvin and the Chipmunks was popular songs and everything, records, and then later became popular in the 80s. So I guess that's where they came up with the idea, well, let's just do this formula with the Smurfs. But the thing that I liked about the Smurfs was the world that they lived in. They lived in these little mushroom houses, and it's this magical land in this hidden village and everything. And that was what made Smurfs what it was. And the other thing is there were so many different Smurfs. There's like hundreds of Smurfs with all these different, personalities. But they decided, well, we're going to take, 4 or 5 of the Smurfs, and we're going to bring them into, modern New York City kind of characters out of time, like, oh, what's this, what's that, and I just from the previews, it's just like, yeah, this is not for me. Plus, I didn't like the character designs. I thought they looked really ugly, whereas the original ones were really cute. And the only thing that from the previews that I looked like I did kind of like was Gargamel. Hank Azaria, who's a fantastic voice actor and on-screen actor, and that's the best combination for something like this. I think when you get voice actors to portray these characters on screen, they're always so much better than when they just hire celebrities. And I don't know why they continue to do this, hire celebrities. I think because the celebrities are easily, they'll come on and do it because they want something for the kids and everything. But often these celebrity actors, they're not known so much for their voice talents and everything. It's just, so it doesn't make sense. But anyway, Hank Azaria portrayed the live action and the voice in the first 2 Smurf movies, and I think did a really great job. They did some prosthetic effects on him to make him really look like Gargamel would look like in real life, and I thought that was a great portrayal. So I guess the only thing that I can gather from the previews of those first 2 movies was the Gargamel character. So now there was a third movie that they kind of rebooted, and I have not seen that, but it looks like it's a little truer to the actual original Smurfs, whereas they don't go to the real world, they don't meet humans, and I guess you can consider Gargamel as sort of a human, but other humans, like in real life and like office politics or weird, I don't know, whatever I kind of gathered from these 2 first Smurf movies. But they did, they looked like they sort of rebooted everything, and the characters looked a lot more like the Smurfs we know, and they lived in the mushroom houses, and just all the things that you would come to expect from a Smurf movie. So I might have to see if that's like on Netflix and maybe watch it or whatever, and see, if it kind of brings back that original feeling. But I have no desire to watch those other 2 Smurf movies. Now, as far as the third movie, which I believe was titled The Lost Village, which isn't, I don't think it's a reference to the hidden village that the Smurfs live in, but there's another hidden village, this Lost Village, that I guess Smurfette is trying to find. She goes in search of who she is and everything. But of course Gargamel is featured in this movie as well, and the visuals look great. He looks like Gargamel, looks like what he looked like in the cartoons and everything. But of course they had to get a celebrity actor, and they cast Rainn Wilson, which I like a lot. He's in The Office. He plays Dwight Schrute and everything. But the previews that I listened to, it just, yeah, it just wasn't Gargamel. You know, it didn't sound like him. So yeah, I mean, I wish they would have just hired Hank Azaria to continue to do the voice, even if he wasn't in prosthetics and live action version of Gargamel. But I think he did a good job capturing that original feeling, because he's got a very distinct a voice that you hear in the cartoon. So I would have liked them to carry that on throughout. So anyway, so back to the drawing, just a little bit about the process of the drawing that I'm doing. Right now, I'm doing the colors. I do all the colors in Copic markers, and then I do sort of a different technique, whereas usually when I'm doing an illustration, I'll do all the line work first. But with this, I like to lay down all the colors, and then I'll go over that with my pen and ink, and I'm using a Series 7 Sable, Winsor Newton Series 7 Sable brush. If you're curious, I use a lot of different brushes. Lately I've been using a lot of brush pens, but for this I was using the Sable brush, which is a fantastic brush. Sometimes they can be a little pricey, so if you're looking for an economy brush, I would probably recommend like a Cotman watercolor brush. Those are great brushes, and they're a little less expensive. And then I'm using Deleter Black ink. It is like my favorite, Deleter number 5. There's I think the 4 and the 5. I think the 5 is a little glossier, so you may want to go with the 4 if you want more of a matte finish. But for the line, I mean, if you're doing a lot of spotting blacks and everything, you may want to go with sort of that flat look of the 4. But I didn't, when I first started using the 5, I didn't know what the differences were. Somebody just recommended Deleter Black number 5, so that's what I started using. But I think I might sort of switch over to the 4 because I like a matte finish more than a glossy finish in most cases. But anyway, we forgot to talk about Azrael. So what is a super villain, evil genius, mad scientist without a sidekick? So of course, Gargamel does have a sidekick, Azrael, who is just this, this cat who is definitely evil, but it kind of like he's, he doesn't know if he really wants to go along with the plans. He'd rather just be, it seems like Gargamel's kind of dragging him around, and he'd rather not be there. But he is evil, and sometimes he will participate in the plans. But for the most part, it's just like, yeah, I don't really want to be there or whatever. So. But it's a great character. I don't know if he's voiced by Frank Welker or not, but Frank Welker has, for a long time, has done all these great, animal voices. He was like Abu in Aladdin, and so many different characters. He's just a master at doing all these different, creature voices and everything. So chances are he'd probably voice Azrael, but I don't want to say that for certain. So anyway, yeah, we're wrapping it up. I did want to include Azrael into this illustration because he's a big, if wherever Gargamel goes, Azrael is probably along there with him. So I definitely wanted to throw him in there. And what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of going around the illustration with my Sino white gel pen, just to kind of pop out the image and just give it a little extra, to make it kind of jump off the screen. And I like off the page. But I like the way that looks. And yeah, so there we go. That is Gargamel, another worthy inductee into the Mad Genius Hall of Fame. Even though you guys got a little preview, we have to make it official. We have to do that unveiling before we induct Gargamel into the Mad Scientist Hall of Fame. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. I present to you Gargamel and Azrael. And let me know, who do you think should belong in the Mad Genius Hall of Fame? If you got suggestions, somebody that I haven't covered before, let me know in the comment section. I will see you guys later. That is all. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Also, you can follow me at Serkworks on social media. Do you like making comics? Then go to Serkworks.com and pick up the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's packed full of fonts, brushes, templates, and more. And best of all, it's totally free.